Welcome everyone. This is Stephen Ringelstein and I'm Carrie Borcherding, and we haven't been on here for maybe about a month because we are in the process of creating a podcast, and I think we just realized that that's going to take a little while to finish all of the steps for that, and we didn't want to be away from you for that long. And so here we are, and we are on separate screens because I am in Colorado and Stephen is in Canada visiting his family right now because it is his mother's 80th birthday. And what's crazy is it was just my mom's 80th birthday as well. And Gail, who also works with us and lives in LA, it was her mother's 80th birthday this year as well. So it was kind of a crazy coincidence that we all have mothers who turned 80 this year. So he is in Canada, I'm in Colorado. And we wanted to hop on today and chat a little bit more about Zone 1 and Zone 2. I think if you've been following us or if you've been watching us for a little while, you've probably heard us start to talk about the zones of how you live your life. And so we specifically wanted to start really delving into what is Zone 1 specifically? What are the characteristics of it? How do you know if you are in that space? What it feels like? And more importantly, how do you move out of that space? So Stephen will start by just sharing with you a little bit about what Zone 1 is, and then we'll talk about the different aspects of that, as well as maybe why you kind of get hunkered into Zone 1, and then finally how to move out of it. Stephen.
So, zone one is a way of perceiving reality. In fact, all the zones are different ways we perceive reality, and the way we perceive reality will impact our decision making. When we are in zone one, we perceive reality as one that happens to us. We are not responsible for what is happening out in the world. We are separate from the world, and things happen. Life happens. And when life happens, we are reacting to what just happened. So we tend to be in a reactive mode in a way that is not very empowering. It actually feels helpless sometimes. Have you ever felt like something happened to you and there's just nothing you could do about it? It really sucks, doesn't it?
Yes.
And in that perspective, there are a lot of things that we tend to go and look at them as they just happen to us, and there's really not much we could do about it. I was just talking to a friend who was looking at a significant delay in his immigration papers, and he said, well, there's nothing I can do about it. It's the government, it's the forms, it's the lawyers, it's what it takes. And it was very hard to get out of that helplessness and feeling very low, depressed at times, of the inability to do anything about it. We tend to become victims, giving our power to things outside of us that have much more control of our lives than we do. In zone one, we also have our fears, our aspects of us that are holding us back. What does the aspects of us mean? Well, consider that when he said I am Stephen, there are many aspects of me that are operating within myself. You know how you have many thoughts in your head? What if each thought was a person actually talking within you? Maybe that person says, hey, you're not good enough. Don't go there. You're not ready. Or maybe that it's too risky right now. Play it safe. Imagine each one of those voices is an aspect of you that lives within you and sometimes runs your life. More often runs your life than we would like to admit. I know that's how it was for me.
So for those of you that are watching, I want you for you all just to start applying this to your own life. Think of a situation that you've been in recently where you felt like the victim, where you felt like you had no control over what was happening, whether you got in an argument with somebody or in a conflict with somebody and you kind of wanted to point the finger at them. It wasn't your fault, it was their fault. Or recently I just got a credit card in the mail and somebody stole my identity. And so that would have been a really easy time to say, oh, that wasn't my fault. That was some idiot stranger that stole my identity and it had nothing to do with me. Or something that happened to you at work, something that your boss did or somebody that you worked with did to you, and you didn't feel like you had any control over it or that it was your fault, that they were just putting you in a circumstance that was out of your control. So maybe just bring that circumstance, that experience to mind, because we're going to help you move from feeling like you are a victim of your circumstances to actually feeling like you can do something about it. Because the energy of those two are very different. Feel the energy of like, oh, it's somebody else's fault. It's out of my control. I can't do anything about it. Notice what that feels like. And even those of you who are watching, even if you're watching the replay, you can drop in the comments what it feels like to be in zone one, in that place where everything is happening to you and you want to point the finger at somebody else. The aspect of feeling scared or overwhelmed and you can't do anything about it. Right? The energy, how do you feel, Stephen, with the energy of being in zone one?
Well, just talking about it, I feel exhausted already.
Totally.
It is exhausting to not to give your power away, right? For me, every time I give my power away, I feel deflated and like, oh, life sucks, heavy, hard, challenging. Yeah, the feeling is not that great, and the longer you stay in it, the deeper those feelings get. And if you stay long enough, you'll find yourself depressed. I met a lot of people that stay a lot in zone one and they end up actually being depressed and have no idea how to get out of it.
Yeah. So what always happens in zone one, especially, is it's like this constant loop that's really hard to get out of. Like you start getting overwhelmed and you feel like you can't do anything about the overwhelm. And then you just start avoiding. And then it gets more uncomfortable because you're avoiding the things that need to be done that are actually making you stressed in the first place. And then you start getting stressed and then you just want to check out and you start watching TV and binging on Netflix for days at a time. And then you start getting even more and more avoiding and the things are just piling up more and more. So can you feel like the cycle that happens in zone one too? It's if you don't nip it in the bud really quickly, it gets really overwhelming and exhausting and it's really hard to dig yourself out of the hole because it's not your fault. So your brain is telling, so your mind is telling you.
We call it zone one happy hour. All your aspects in zone one get together and collaborate to convince you there's nothing you can do about it. It just sucks. Suffer quietly. And then a happy hour turns into a big party. We call it a zone one party, where all the aspects of you get the better of you and you have absolutely no energy to do anything about it.
Yes. So I'm not sure about you, but are you ready to get out of that space of feeling like you don't have any control and wanting some practical tips of how to start to remedy the situation? How do you start getting energetically out of the space of zone one? And this applies to your life, to business. Imagine doing business in that space and wondering why you're not getting more clients or why things aren't working out because it's just not your fault. Nobody's following you on social media or the emails, nobody's opening the emails, right? Can you feel the energy of that and wonder why your business isn't growing? So it doesn't matter whether it's life or business, it applies across the board. You do not want to be living in zone one. And people don't want to be around you very much when you're living in that space either. So Stephen, what are some ways that we can, what are a couple ways that we can get out of zone one?
Well, before maybe we talk about how to get out of zone one, let's talk about zone two for a moment.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, what is zone two?
That would help.
Yes, before we get out of something we don't like, let's find out if we actually like where we're heading, right?
Sorry about that. I skipped a step.
So zone two is when you realize that you're responsible in creating everything in your life, including the things you don't like. Now, it's very hard to wrap our minds sometimes that we're creating things that we are taught that are out of our control. But what if you don't have to believe that? Just use it as an access point to create different perspectives that allow you to move to zone two. So in zone two, you're creating everything, which means you could solve any problem you have. Any challenge you have is solvable because there are so many infinite options to do something about it. So the main question in zone two, here's a problem, I don't like it, and my question to you is, what are you going to do about it? If you're stuck in zone one, most people in zone one tells you, well, I don't know, there's nothing you can do about it, it's not my fault. I said, well, what if it was your creation? What would you do about it? Well, I don't know because I didn't create it. Yes, and I know you're persistent to stay in zone one, but if you did create it, even if we don't even know why, what can you do about it? And when you start thinking about what can you do about it, you're instantly looking at options and solutions that will get you out of zone one. So what can you do about the one challenge right now you are thinking about that keeps you in zone one, that you are in zone one, whether it's financial, clients, not having enough money, not manifesting what you want, whatever that challenge it is, if you are 100% creating it, what can you do about it? And would you go to the comfort zone of saying, well, I don't know, and stay in zone one? Or would you look for an answer? So that brings this point that is a phenomena, mind blowing phenomena, of how many of us are truly committed to zone one life. When I say truly committed, it's not that you want to be there, you don't want to be there, but you're also not willing to do anything about it.
This is like
So,
that phenomena, you all, of like the comfortable discomfort. Like you're so uncomfortable, but it seems more uncomfortable to do something different.
yeah,
Yeah.
there is there is a habitual way of being in zone one that you have so used to be there for so long to blame everyone else and not do something about it that it's just became normal. It's normalized. And it's normalized in a way that it's easier to stay there. It seems, but not really, because it's very uncomfortable and you hate it. But because it's normalized, you just keep staying there. Have you ever had that experience for yourself?
It feels like a habit.
Yeah, it's a habit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the one thing I've noticed about people who are committed to zone one is that no matter how many options you'll propose to them of what they could do, they'll immediately tell you that's not going to work and that's going to fail and that's stupid and that's a lot of work. I don't know that I want to go through all of that, right? They're going to have what we call the aspects of yourself that makes excuses. All the reasons why not. And they cannot come with one reason of why yes. Have you ever heard that before from people? Or maybe yourself. You come up with every single excuse to not make that happen. We like to call excuse is a lie in denial. A lie in denial. You're lying to yourself. You're in denial that actually there are options and you can do something about it. You just don't want to bother. It's too comfortable to stay where you're at in zone one. And I want to also share another perspective that it is okay to be in zone one. No one is saying that there's anything wrong with you staying in zone one. You're probably learning a lot of lessons. Yes, it's miserable. And maybe one day you wake up and you say, I've had enough. Enough is enough, and you're ready to shift. And until that day, you're not ready to shift. And that's perfectly okay. No one will make you wrong for being in zone one. But when you do, something will open up for you and you say, you know what? Enough is enough. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to move to zone two. But the pain level in zone one will have to be more than the pain of taking an action for something you're not responsible for, so to speak. So can you think of an example right now that have you stuck in zone one, that it will be too much effort to take the necessary steps that you already know what they are to deal with it? It's just too much. Maybe it's a conflict with someone that is too much work to deal with it, and you just don't want to deal with it. You want to avoid it, or you have an excuse of a reason why not to do it today. You have other things to do, other priorities. So think of something that have you stuck in zone one, and more than just one day. It's those things that you've lived with it for a while. Like, I can't afford it. How many times you've said, I can't afford this and I can't afford that? It's when I make more money, then I'll be able to go on vacation or do what I really want to do. Until then, I'm kind of stuck. Or only when I have enough clients, then I can actually expand or do what I need to do in my business. Until then, I'm going to struggle for a while because that's the way it is. I was being told I have to pay my dues or work harder or wait, or it's really not my fault. The world is not ready for me yet. So notice what kind of excuses and what do you tell yourself that have you stay committed in zone one. And only you know your truth, because only when you're ready and you make the choice to move to zone two, you will be ready to move to zone two. And before that, you're not ready because the pain level in zone one has not grown to be intense enough for you to do something about it. And some people stay in zone one their whole life, and there's nothing wrong with that either. But if you're one of those people that have a pain level that you're sick and tired of, that you've been dealing with it for a while, and you feel like it's time to move, you'll feel that anger, frustration, that, ah, I've had it kind of a feeling that will move you to, like, fine, I don't care what I need to do. I'm going to do something about it. I don't care if it's jumping off a cliff. I've had it. Have you had moments like that? Can you relate to moments like that in your life today? And are you there today with anything that you have been struggling with and normalizing it as that's just the way it is for a long time now? I've realized that no one can move anyone else from zone one. No one. Only you can make that inner choice within yourself. And until you do, you'll stay in zone one. No one can inspire you, push you, convince you. It is a choice that you have to know in your heart that that's your truth. And until you do, zone one is your life. And zone two will await you until you're ready. If you are ready to move to zone two with any area of your life that you have had it, you have to be committed to it because it's going to take some work. But if you are ready and you're committed to it, it will begin by starting to notice every time you put yourself in zone one, and when you do have the awareness of it, and begin to move yourself to the question, what can I do about it today, right now, and engage in an action. Now, you might not know what that action is, and that's okay. So, there are little practices you could do just to get you out of zone one physically, like change the room you're in, get out of the house, go for a walk, Go to a place that you don't go usually and be without question, what can I do? And allow that action to emerge for you. It will come, you'll know. But sometimes changing the physical space is as simple as getting you out of zone one to a physical space of zone two. The second thing is to look at who you're surrounded by. If you're surrounded by other zone one people and that's your company, very hard to get out of because they're going to be enforcing you staying in zone one because misery like friends. So go and connect to people in zone two who are a lot more action oriented and dealing with their challenges and get inspired by being just around them and see what kind of actions you can take. So change space and change the people around you. And in both cases, keep asking, what action can I take today? And what action can I take today? And what action can I take today? What can I do about it? How do you handle it, Carrie?
I love that. So I heard you say two things. The first was what action can I take today? And that helps to get out of zone one, as well as who are you surrounding yourself by. And those two things have come up for me a ton lately. And it doesn't, I want to share a couple examples maybe from my own life that can just help to give you a view into some things that you can do, because it doesn't always have to be hard. For example, we have a lot on our plate, Stephen and I do, for what we are doing in our business right now. And for example, we have the podcast, and there's like 10 million steps that we have to do to get ready for that. And at the same time, we have some events coming up. We have our 2-day event coming up. And I started to get really overwhelmed. And my old tendency in zone one, when I got overwhelmed, was just then to start avoiding or to start panicking a little bit. And then I just wanted to check out because I started to get so overwhelmed. I'm like, oh, I don't even know where to start. And then I went down that crazy spinning cycle, like I was talking about earlier. And so when I started implementing, how do I just stop that right away and go into zone two, was instead of keeping it all in my head and going over and trying to figure out all the millions of things I had to do, I literally just stopped. What can I do? The first thing I can do is write down a list of all of the things, of all of the steps, because at least when I had it down on a piece of paper and I could see it, it calmed down my overwhelmed part that was spinning out. And then I went and I started putting it on my calendar. So here is the step I'm going to do today at this time, and then this time, and then this time. And I started moving the whole list onto my calendar. And so then not only did that take care of the overwhelmed spinning part, but it also started taking away the part of myself that wants to avoid. Because as long as I have it on my calendar and I know what I'm doing, I do it. The part that doesn't do it is when I have this huge list and I don't know when I'm going to do it or what I'm doing. And so that immediately took me from zone one to zone two. So it can be as simple as that, right? It can be as simple as just breaking things down and putting it on your calendar, and that cuts it out. But then there are times maybe that aren't quite that simple, where you're in a conflict, let's say, with somebody, or I was in a conflict with somebody recently. And so I got really in zone one. I started to go into the blame, or this is this person's fault. It's not my fault. They should be coming to me. I shouldn't have to go to them. And I quickly realized, okay, I'm in zone one. This is not helping anyone. How do I start taking responsibility and owning my part in all of this? And so then it's maybe going and having a conversation. For me, it was kind of swallowing, and I wrote about this in a post in Facebook. My zone one part used to like, oh, I just won't answer the phone if they call. I'll just let it go to voicemail. Or I will try to avoid them. I won't go to any party or anything where I think they're going to be because I don't want to see them. Right? I'm sure you all probably can relate to this in some way, because I think we all can do this at times. But instead of doing all those things, I swallowed my nervousness and my fear, and I knew what I wanted to say, and I knew that I wanted to say it by speaking from my heart. And so that was taking the action of not only just talking to them, but also preparing to not just go into the blame part of sharing my conversation with them, but really dropping into my heart space and how can I really take ownership for my part in that conversation. And so the zone 2 was speaking from my heart space, not just speaking, not just having a conversation. So there are many different ways that you can take action. Sometimes for me, it's just like Stephen said, to I'm in a like bad space, or I wake up and I roll out of bed and I feel off. And it can be as simple as going and taking my dog for a walk, because that often just gets me out of that kind of shitty feeling space that I'm in. So there's a million different infinite answers to what you can do. And they can be really simple, and sometimes they can be more challenging. And most of this, oftentimes, it can make you step outside of your comfort zone at the beginning, but also as you get more used to moving from zone 1 to zone 2, what you will realize, or what I have realized, is that it's actually far more relieving and far more expansive and freedom like to be in zone 2 than to be exhausted and leaking energy all the time that it takes to give my power away when I am in zone 1.
Mhm. So the key thing is what Carrie said is really one is to realize, hey, I'm in zone one. Because if you don't realize that, you just keep playing the same old story. And once you realize that, to make a choice, I want to move to zone two, and I'm going to do it right now. And then you ask, what can I do about it? As an access point, even if you don't believe you're responsible that everything happened to you or that people hurt you and it's their fault, even if you try on, well, what if I caused it? And what can I do about it? It does give you access to a solution where if you don't take the responsibility, you have no access to it. So think about the responsibility not as an absolute truth, but more of an access point to give you other perspectives to find solutions that otherwise, by staying in zone one, you'll have no access to. Now, of course, there's a lot more to it, which is why we're planning to do more events, and we're going to share more with you about that so we can teach you a lot of the practical tools that you could use to make your life a lot easier in zone two rather than get stuck in zone one. And of course, there's zone 3 and 4, which we'll talk about as well in the future. There's a lot more to it, but this is just a little introduction, I would say, to beginning to moving to living your life as the best version of yourself.
Beautiful. So just play around with this as you're walking around this week. Notice what zone, like keep asking yourself, what zone am I in? Anytime you're having a conversation with somebody, if you're laying on your couch, just notice kind of where you are. Just start having a really keen awareness about what zone you are living in, because that is the only way that you have the ability to move zones, is just to even know what zone you're in the first place. So just play around with that this week. And one of the things we really wanted to do some more one-on-one coaching with people, because we've been having tons of people ask us, okay, so I understand the concept of zone 1 or zone 2, but they keep getting stuck in, I don't totally know how to do it. I can see myself doing it. You all have the awareness that maybe you are in zone 1, but then get like a little tripped up on, okay, how do I actually implement this into my life so that I can start moving up through the zones and life doesn't feel so hard and I'm not in such this rooted habit that is so uncomfortable. And so we have put together a coach-a-thon that is going to happen on November 7th, which is a Thursday. So it'll be at this same time, not next Thursday, but the one after that, at this same time, 2 p.m. And it'll be an hour and a half. So 2 to 3:30 Mountain Standard Time, where we will be doing one-on-one hot seat coaching for anybody that wants to pop on with us. And you come with a challenge, or whether it's in your business or in your life where you're feeling really stuck, you're in zone 1 and you're sick and tired of it, like Stephen was talking about it. and you're really ready to end that. You are really ready to step into the next phase of how do I stop living my life in this uncomfortable place, but I don't quite know how. And so Stephen and I will be on doing live coaching from 2 to 3:30 on November 7th and help you move through the zones if you're feeling stuck and you are ready but you don't quite know how to do it on your own. So we hope that you all will join us. It will be kind of like a first come, first serve. I'm going to send out an email. I will put a post on Facebook and you will reach out to us directly and let us know if you are interested in being one of those people that are on live during that time on Thursday, and you will reserve your spot. So the first come, first serve. And I have a feeling that this might be popular. So send us an email or a note, a message in Facebook as soon as possible. And we would love to support you in moving out of the comfortable discomfort.
Perfect.
Right. Well, we will be on here again next Thursday. I think we're trying to fit a few in because we want to give you an idea of not just zone 2 too, but even moving into zone 3 and zone 4 as well. So we will be popping on here a few more times before November 7th. So just keep your eye out for emails as well as posts on Facebook. And just to give you an idea of some other pieces of this, because there's a lot involved. So just keep an eye out, but otherwise we will see you soon. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Take care.
Have fun.